This video is all about how the pandemic changed us forever, really. Let's get into it. So aside from like the health concerns and the very obvious things that you would think of when you think of the pandemic, there are a lot of other changes that occurred during that time that have had a really lasting impact on us. And I think that personally these things are here to stay and they're going to keep evolving. What do I mean? There was a lot of financial strain during the pandemic. People suddenly had their whole way of life. Maybe they owned a restaurant, maybe they had a services-based business, whatever it is, that they needed to change everything they did to operate that business overnight. And that has been really troubling for a lot of people. They've had to pivot their whole lives, their industry, to try to cater to new needs and new customers and a new way of doing business altogether. Now, for the people that work for others, there was a lot to figure out too. Working from home, how to navigate mostly virtual workspace for people. And a lot of people found out that they actually liked it more. And with the rising, ballooning costs of everything in our lives today, a lot of people, they don't want to drive an hour and a half each way to work. When they realized at some point, they're like, wait a minute. I work 9 to 5 and I don't lose an hour and a half on each end of that to spend with my kid or my dog or myself. People realize that a lot of those things actually are important to them and that, hey, maybe their relationships got better in a lot of ways. Maybe their relationships or their lifestyle got a lot easier for them. Maybe they're a caretaker and that enabled them to outsource less and save on costs and, whatever it is. A lot of people realize that the way they were doing business before or the way that they were experiencing the workplace before is not the way that they want to experience it moving forward. And, I certainly think that a lot of that has translated to the public sentiment about certain things. During the pandemic, a lot of corporate greed got exposed. A lot of people had a lot more time to be sitting around watching news outlets and understanding what is going on day to day. When a lot of us are strapped to a computer screen at work, people realize that there are a lot of these things going on that are pretty intolerable. And, that has translated to public sentiment in the sense that a lot of people just aren't going to be willing to work shitty jobs anymore. Many complain that people don't want to work these days, and that's really not true when you look at statistics, but people definitely do want to work for a place where they feel like they might be able to make ends meet, God forbid, or they feel like they have some benefits that they're taken care of, that their health is taken care of, and that they can make arrangements for childcare. Whatever their needs are, they just want to see that they're at least on a base level met. So it's resulted in, I would say, kind of a large wave of people who are just not going to accept the status quo anymore. I think a lot of employers are kind of picking up on that and realizing how could we, shift things around and not overburden ourselves, but how can we make the workplace a little bit better for people? And the companies who aren't figuring that out, I think they're going to be struggling or replacing workers with AI because they can't figure it out. So this is just something that's really happened out there in the world, in the workplace, from my observation. And then talking about people's personal lives, like their relationships. A lot of relationships started during this time. A lot of relationships certainly ended during this time. One quick way to test a marriage or a relationship is to go from, seeing each other when you saw them to living and breathing 24/7 with each other for several months on end. Everybody working from home, the kids doing school from home, that tested a lot of people. And as a mediator, I saw a lot of people for divorces during that time or to sort out something along those lines. So a lot of people were having these realizations about what kind of relationship do I want to be in? Is this it for me? Or family relationships that were becoming quite tenuous. I think you saw a higher number of people starting to do work on themselves because frankly, they had to. So you saw a lot of these relationships kind of having a magnifying effect of whatever was going on. And I'm here to tell you that if that happened to you, it's not because you failed at something or you chose wrong. It was something that you just had to learn. When relationships break down, and you can blame it on the pandemic, you can blame it on whatever you want, but that was something that was probably going to happen anyways, is what those people really need to hear, is that some of these issues that people ran into during the pandemic where it just blew up in their face and they really had to make a radical shift in their life, It was out of necessity, and it's not something that would have never happened if not but for XYZ. It's something that was probably a taking time bomb to begin with. But I think it's important to say all of this to say that none of this is about really a relationship or a job or how people feel about what's going on in our government or in our economy. It's actually much deeper than that. The byproduct of, making everybody stay at home, of people kind of being in a very tight-knit space and without a lot of the distractions that our everyday lives involved before. You weren't going out to the store as much. You weren't going out to the movies. You weren't going out with your friends. A lot of that wasn't happening for most people. And when all of that goes away, you're just kind of left with you. A lot of people were left looking in the mirror saying, who am I? What am I? Why am I here? And what have I been doing this whole time? Like, what am I actually doing right now in my life? And those moments in life are pretty hard. And it definitely led to some really hard times for a lot of people. I know and have worked with several people that, straight up needed to get help from several people because they were seriously having like a real mental health episode, resurfacing of childhood traumas, you name it. Like a lot of stuff really went down for people that had been kind of pushing down a lot of those things that hadn't been dealt with for a long time. So when you have things that are so serious like that kind of bubble up to the surface and all of these things that you kind of weren't filling out your time with, when you're kind of left with your own thoughts, you're going to end up in a place where, you might end up asking yourself those big questions, and that can be a lot. But if you get the help, if you do what you need to do, you're going to be better for it. Because here's the thing, we're only going on living our lives the way we've been living them. And until we realize that we're not really happy, until we kind of sit down and take a moment with ourselves and really kind of assess that, you're not really going to be happy, and you're not really going to be motivated to make the changes that you need to make in life, whatever happened to everybody. You can call it a wake-up call, you can call it like a mass spiritual awakening, I don't know what you want to call it, but something definitely happened to all of us. And maybe not all of us, maybe there's a lot of people out there that whatever happened during the pandemic, it kind of made them realize that they were on the right track with a lot of things, and that's great too. And then there's probably people, I guess I'd say if you're kind of feeling like, well, I did have a lot of those feelings come up during the pandemic, but I didn't really do anything about it. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything about it though. and that's where coaches and therapists and people like that come in to really help you break things down and figure out, okay, how do I want to move forward? So what does all of that actually mean moving forward for all of us? I think for those people who did kind of have a come to Jesus moment, a little bit of a rude awakening, so to speak, I think those folks are going to end up on the path that serves them the most. Whether they had to make some career changes, whether they had to choose to live a different lifestyle, whether they chose to stop making bread and drinking wine during the pandemic and do something a little healthier for themselves. Whatever it was, whatever small steps it may be to start, it doesn't matter. The fact that you kind of have those realizations, it's like anything else, admitting it is the first step, or coming to terms with it is the first step. It really is. I think in the broadest sense, it means that people are going to stop showing up for things that they don't feel serve them. And I think that's better for all of us. I think that has a chance to actually improve our economy. I think that actually has a chance to improve our government on a larger scale, obviously. And on a more personal scale, it's the beginning stages of people figuring out something that is much more aligned with them in their lives, whether it's a business move, whether it's a personal relationship thing, or whether it's just about how you view yourself and your life and what you want to do with it. And for those who had a lot of those feelings come up during the pandemic and kind of felt like they skirted them back under the rug again and they haven't really addressed them fully, that's okay. You realized it, which is the most important part. And the next step is to just start taking those steps. And look, none of us are probably going to be the same, but I think there's a good chance that most of us are going to be better for it. So give it some thought, keep working at it, and I'll see you at the next level.